So, with the recent tax reforms in Nigeria, the new tax regulatory authority, that's the NRS, has finally migrated from TaxPro Max to the new NRS platform, which you can see the URL on my screen. So now, for businesses in Nigeria that need to file VAT or other federal taxes, you need to do that on the NRS platform, no longer the TaxPro Max. So if you're doing it for the first time, all you need to do is go into the URL on my screen, the selfservice.nrs.gov.ng, and then for the first time users, you can simply use the first option here where you log in with your Tax Pro Max credentials. So this is the fastest way and the easiest ways to get on the new platform. So your same login details you use in your Tax Pro Max on the Tax Pro Max platform is what you use here, and it's pretty seamless. Initially, there were some issues, but I think since beginning of June, it's been quite seamless to migrate. The other thing you can then do if you've logged in the first time, like I have, is to log in with your new credentials. So I'll click on the third option since I'm a return user. And then once you do that, you can sign in. Right. So that's how you migrate from Tax Pro Max to the NRS platform. So with the new platform, it's quite loaded. There's a lot of getting used to that needs to be done on the platform. But what we'll focus on for today is just a quick overview, and then more importantly, how do you file your VAT and the other taxes like withholding and corporate tax. So from the dashboard here, you'll see a bunch of different cards from your profile to e-invoicing and to self-tax filing, which is where we need to be. So for your VAT filing, withholding tax, CIT filing, and payment, where you want to go to is the self-tax filing. So if we click into self-tax filing, that should take a minute to load. Okay, finally. So once you get into the tax filing module, you see like a sub dashboard here as well. And then here to tell you if you have any taxes due, any pending payments, your wallet balance, and all that. And there's also some charts here to tell you what sort of taxes you've been paying over time. Right, where you want to go to next is taxes due. So if we click on taxes due button, that takes us right into the taxes that are already due. Just like in Tax Pro Max, it will usually show you like a pending list of tax that needs to be filed. So on my view here, we can see that CIT, which is a corporate income tax, is the only thing pending. By now, which is 20th of June, one would have expected that VAT for May should be showing here, but that hasn't come up here for some reason. So it looks like there's still some teething issues with the new platform. But I'm going to focus on the tax example. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the template for VAT, which I used for last month for April, and then I'll use that to run this example, and then we can take it from there. So once you get on the self-tax filing page on the NRS platform, and then your VAT, if it's due, will show on the pending list like I showed you earlier. So from that field, you can actually download the VAT template for the new platform. It's different from the previous one, which was just a single sheet sales schedule. With the new template, is a bit more complex, if I can use that word. I mean, it's straightforward, but because you have so many sheets, 10 different sheets, it might be overwhelming for many users. So I'm going to try to make it simple and explain what is happening within this new template. Right. So first things first is the first sheet is just an explanatory sheet where you have the details around the template and how NRS wants us to use it. And then the second one, which is this VAT returns form, is a sheet you don't need to do anything on. So it's just a calculation sheet that pulls from all the other sheets. So the real sheet that we'll be populating, if necessary, is from the third item on this list, Schedule A, which is for sales, all the way to Schedule F. So those six schedules, but about two of them have subschedules. So we have subschedules for A and subschedules for C, right? But those are the main one. Like in the previous platform, the most important of all this is the sales sheet, which I can start from. And for the sales sheet, you have to provide all the transactions you've done for the month you're filing in terms of the client. In terms of the client, the platform is not very is not very smooth, but let's manage it. So in terms of the clients, you put the name of the client here, the tax ID, the TIN number of the client, the product you rendered or the service you provided, and then the category of the transaction, whether it's VATable, exempted, or zero rated, the product description, then the place of consumption, so which state code, and then you also have local government code for that. Then finally, you put the sales value, right? The sales value information goes in here. So it's very similar to the same field we used to provide in FI in the TaxPro Max. So nothing new here. Then the next sheet is for the adjustment. So if you needed to make any adjustment, either you overfiled the previous month or underfiled, this sheet can be used to provide the details or the description of the transaction, the tax ID, the name of the customer, the date the original transaction happened, the invoice number, and then the amount involved that you're adjusting for. And then you also have the amount here as well. So you put this there. So in the case where, for example, for the previous month, your sales was 5 million, but you filed 6 million, you can adjust for it in the following month. And if it was lower, then you can also adjust for it. This won't be a field you use every time. It will be once in a while where those sort of issues come up. Then you have the purchases field or the purchases plate here. And then for this one, it has to do with the input VAT, so that at least you can reduce the amount of VAT you pay if you've already incurred VAT on certain inputs that you leverage in your in your transactions, in your daily transactions. So for this one, the information also needs to be put in here. We can see some of the details here. This sheet contains Schedule C and C1 and the subschedules. And in in Schedule C, the total value of local goods, services, and fixed asset purchased during the period would be listed, and for which VAT has been incurred. So if you've incurred VAT on them, you provide the details on this sheet, and then all that information then also feeds into your VAT computation. Then you also have the sub schedule where you have the list, the actual purchase list on this sheet. And for here, what you're doing basically is to list out each transaction item, who the vendor was, the vendor name, the vendor's ID, the description, and the amount you paid exclusive of VAT, because the VAT will be computed separately. And then obviously you also choose the VAT status here. Then I think there's a different one here. So there's C2. There's one schedule here, which is the C2 list schedule, and then I think this is an additional list in case you need to provide additional details, right? So there's a couple of tables that one can use. Then the next sheet here is for the import. So if your business involves importing, you can also track some of those transactions there. Then for self-charge VAT, you can also put the information in here as well. List out the items and then put all the parameters. Then for sales to MDAs or appointed agents, so as we know, there are some organizations that are eligible to deduct the VAT and make the payments themselves. So if you're dealing with like MDAs, government ministries, departments, or agencies, they will typically deduct the VAT themselves and even the withholding tax. And certain other organizations like banks, oil and gas companies, I think telecoms, and a few others are also agents that would deduct. So if you deal with those kind of clients, then most likely they would have deducted VAT at source. So you can provide that detail here so that you're not charged twice for the same transaction. And then once you provide the name of the agent, which is your client in this case, the address, the ID, and all the other information, and most importantly, the actual amount, the invoice value, then the VAT is computed. And all that information feeds into your VAT computation for the month. So, in a nutshell, I think the most important sheets that one needs to be mindful of is first the sales sheet, Schedule A, then the Schedule C, which is for purchases for your input VAT to make sure that you're not overpaying, VAT monthly on a monthly basis. And then the final one is the Schedule F, where some of your clients might have deducted the VAT at source, so you also don't want to pay twice for those types of transaction. You list them there, and so that's how you deal with the new template with on the NRS platform. I'm going to show us a quick example of a sample template that was used recently. So now let's look at a sample of the template that has been completed. And these are just illustrative data just to make it clearer. So like I mentioned, the first two sheets are just for information. You don't need to do anything there, right? Where you need to spend time on is from Schedule A. So with the Schedule A, like I said, all you need to do is list out the transactions you completed for the month you're filing, so previous month, and then you provide the TIN where available. You should always try to get that and provide the product name should also be provided that you're rendering. Then the status by default should be zero. But if for any reason the service is an exempted service, I think like education or healthcare, then you can put the exempted or the zero rated as applicable. Then the product description, you put in the state where the consumption was made, and then the local government where the consumption was made. And finally, the sales schedule is entered in here. For sales adjustments, usually you won't have anything here, but if you have, then you can put the information. For the purchases as well, you can include that on the purchase list item here on C2. Imports, usually you won't have that. Self charge VAT, usually you won't have that. And then finally, for the withheld VAT withheld by MDAs or appointed agents, you can enter the information here, similar to what you provided on the sales schedule, and just put the information here. Then, based on that, the VAT that was withheld will then be netted out from what you need to pay. So after you've entered those information, what you need to do before you upload on NRS platform is to review it here and ensure that it tallies with what you expect. So if we come into the VAT returns form, we'll see that the total sales figure has been captured, and this is capturing from the Schedule A, 60 million income. If I go into my Schedule A, you will see that the total of this was 60 million. So that's what's being reported here. If there were any of the goods that were exempted, they will report here as well. Then based on that revenue of 60, 7.5 is the VAT calculated, so 4.5 million. Then I didn't provide any list of purchases, so those were nil, right? But if you had provided anywhere you've paid input tax, then that would also calculate your input VAT and reduce the amount you need to pay. However, one of the transactions I entered here, the was for like an appointed agent where they withheld the withholding tax. So in that case, you can see that 2.250 million has been captured for the VAT withheld. So the amount I need to pay for the month, rather than being 4.5, is now 2.2 50 million. And so this looks about right. Then one can complete the information and then upload on the NRS platform. So I'll show us how to also do that in a second. So the final thing I would want to show in terms of filing the VAT is for Aster users, right? The process is still as seamless as it was before. So from the Aster product, you can go into the tax page under compliance. And once you're within the tax page under compliance, you can choose the period you want to file the VAT for. And by default, Aster would have computed what your VAT payable is based on your output VAT from your invoices, your input VAT from your expenses that are eligible, and then the VAT withheld from any transaction you might have done with MDAs or appointed agents. So that information will already be on your tax, on your Aster page waiting for you. So at the end of the period when you need to file, you can simply come here and download the sales schedule. This sales schedule would be what you would use in the template to populate the sales sheet on the NRS platform that I showed previously. And then it will also already have shown you what all the fields you need, the status, the value of the transaction, the description, the client name, the TIN as well, where you've provided that in the system. And then any other thing that is applicable in terms of purchases and all that would also be captured. And then you can simply copy the information from your Aster schedule download and then paste it. So you don't have to start, trying to sieve through all the transactions from your bank statement or whatnot. Aster makes that easy for you. And then finally, once you've filed on NRS, you can always come to Aster to make the payment as well. And from the payment page, it's as simple as clicking send, entering the amount to be paid, and then depending on the payment option you're using on the platform, you can enter the details and then finalize the payment. So I think that'll be all as far as filing VAT and making payments on the new NRS platform goes. If there are comments or questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you and have a good one, guys.